You don't need me to tell you that there's a overabundance of randomly generated dungeon crawler type games on the market right now. I mean, there's Dead Cells, Enter the Gungeon, Binding of Isaac, and one of my favorites, Risk of Rain. And the second one. In this video, I will be talking about both Risk of Rain games. And since both of these games are incredibly similar and a lot of the points overlap, if you want to know which one I'm talking about, direct your attention to the top right corner of the screen. If I'm going to talk about the first one, there will be a 1 displayed, and a 2 when I'm talking about the second one. And if I'm talking about both games, there will be nothing displayed. And I need to mention that the second one is in very early access, so some of the points in this video will probably or most likely be fixed by the time you might watch this. Without further ado, let's get started with the story. The story for the first one is so simple. Here, just watch the intro cutscene. Simple, right? You just crash, and you gotta get back to your ship. That's it. No need to be complicated. The second game, as of writing, does not have a story, but I'm pretty sure it's the same as the original one. Gameplay. The gameplay of both games are basically the same. You spawn on a random beginning map, kill random spawning enemies, and get money and EXP, while trying to find the teleporter. Then you kill a boss that spawns and go to the next land, and repeat. You use the money that you get from killing those monsters to open chests, which can supply you with a random item. And depending on what item you get, it will completely change how you approach your run. You can get a guitar that has a chance to hurt other enemies when you shoot one, which oddly enough is not an electric guitar, or an ammo clip that gives your secondary an extra charge. And these chests are randomly scattered around the stage, and they go well with Risk of Rain's main gimmick. The difficulty increases proportionally depending on the amount of time your run takes. This creates a risk versus reward gameplay thingy. Let's say this. You find the teleporter, but you know that there's a chest or something across the map. Do you risk the extra difficulty to get some extra loot? This mechanic is well implemented towards the end game of your run as well. In the first game, when you get to the second to last level, you have an option to go to the final level, or you can restart from the beginning with the chest refilled for more rewards with higher difficulty. In the second game, there is not an ending level yet. You just sort of looped the levels until you either die or a portal shows up and you just sort of stop existing. Art! The first game's art style is pixelized with really small sprites. But don't let it fool you. Despite the fact that the sprites are so small, they convey everything that they need to. You can easily differentiate different enemy types and whatever attack they are doing. The second game's art style is also effective. You can easily tell what an enemy is, and since everything is low poly, they don't need to spend hundreds of hours to make a single texture or model. The reason that I think the devs made everything so simplistic is that at later difficulties, there could be hundreds of enemies on screen, making enemies pretty much indistinguishable from each other. So why would they make a hyper-detailed model or sprite if half the time you can hardly distinguish a single enemy apart? Also, by that time, you have like 30 things proccing at once, and which in itself is pretty amazing. You can barely understand what's going on half the time. And what's cool, on both games, I hardly suffered any major slowdown on my computer. Music! The music for both games is a mix of Galaxy-style synth-sounding stuff and pixelated stuff and really good drums. And, I don't know how to grade music. It fits, it's fine, it's great, it's not horrible. But here's some examples. In the first one, the UI is hard to read, the controller support is there, but it's implemented pretty weird. The game doesn't communicate on how unlocking things work in general, really. The walking speed is a bit too slow for me. You can't walk and fire at the same time, which is a bit weird. And sometimes you just sort of fall through platforms, which is odd. Second game, they fixed a lot of these problems the original one had. But converting a game into 3D has its own problems. Finding the portal is made way more difficult in 3D. A lot of the times it's clipped through the floor or something, which I feel they can fix that. There's no vertical, like, boundary walls, so you can just sort of leave the arena from the top. And also they remove the enforcer. I'm angry! Conclusion! Both Risk and Raid 1 and 2 have very addictive gameplay, simple yet effective art style, good music, and an overall positive experience. They both suffer from lack of polish in some places, but most of the time it's fine. I would definitely recommend the first one because it's finished and is a good amount of content for $10. The second one I think needs a couple more updates until you buy it, but $20 is still too steep for me, I would say. But yeah, I would recommend both of them. And remember, Risk of Rain 2 is still in early development, so some of the things I mentioned in this video might have been fixed already by the time you're watching this. But yeah, I would recommend playing both games.